Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. The ultrasound photo trembled in her hands, the same one we'd framed together just months ago. Her voice cracked as she said the words that would haunt me forever: "It's done." And just like that, the future we'd dreamed of was reduced to a crumpled piece of paper and the scent of hospital antiseptic clinging to her skin. I should have walked away right then. But my traitorous heart still begged me to reach for her. The last time I saw her, she stood in the doorway of our old apartment, her hands trembling around the ultrasound photo, the one she'd once pressed to my chest with tears in her eyes, whispering, "We're going to be a family," in that voice that used to make my knees weak. Now that same photo was crumpled in her shaking fingers, the black and white image of what might have been our child bent at the edges from how tightly she'd been clutching it. Her face, usually so animated with its constellation of freckles and that one crooked incisor when she smiled, looked like it had aged a decade in the months since I'd walked out. Dark circles bruised the space beneath her red-rimmed eyes, and her lips, those lips I'd kissed 1,000 times, were chapped and bitten raw. She wore my old college hoodie, the one she'd stolen years ago and never returned, now hanging loose on her frame like a ghost of happier times. "It's done," she said, her voice scraping out of her throat like the words were made of broken glass. The weight of those two syllables hit me like a sucker punch to the solar plexus, knocking the air from my lungs in one painful whoosh. I could smell the familiar vanilla and lavender scent of her shampoo mixed with something new, the sterile, antiseptic odor of a hospital that clung to her skin and clothes. My hands twitched at my sides with the muscle memory of reaching for her, of pulling her into my arms and burying my face in the crook of her neck where she was always warmest. But I didn't move. Couldn't. Not when the image of her tangled in someone else's sheets flashed behind my eyelids every time I blinked. Instead, I stared at the chipped paint on the doorframe where we'd once carved our initials inside a lopsided heart during our first anniversary, drunk on cheap wine and cheaper love. The M+S was barely visible now, faded by time and weather and the brutal Albuquerque sun that streamed through the hallway window every afternoon. A gust of wind sent a tumbleweed of fast food wrappers skittering past her bare feet. She'd always hated wearing shoes inside, and the mundane absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Here we were, standing in the ruins of our life together, with literal garbage blowing between us like some shitty metaphor in a straight-to-TV movie. Her breath hitched in that way I knew meant she was about to cry, and my traitorous body tensed with the instinct to comfort her before my brain caught up. The silence stretched between us, thick with all the things we'd never say now, how we'd picked out baby names at 3 a.m., how she used to sing off-key in the shower, how I'd proposed on that rickety pier in Santa Monica as the sun set behind us. The ultrasound crinkled as her grip tightened, the sound obscenely loud in the quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's TV blared a laugh track, the canned merriment a cruel counterpoint to the devastation in her eyes when she finally turned away, leaving me standing there with the ghost of our future in my throat and the taste of copper in my mouth where I'd bitten through my cheek. The days after blurred into a numb procession of routines: gym, work, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., until her name flashed on my phone again, this time with a photo attachment that froze my blood, a grainy sonogram image with a timestamp from yesterday, the tiny flicker of a heartbeat still visible in the corner where the technician's cursor had hovered. "I couldn't do it," her message read, the words pixelated like she'd typed them through tears, "but I can't do this alone either." The walls of my apartment seemed to press closer, the popcorn texture of the ceiling suddenly fascinating as I traced cracks with my eyes to avoid the truth glaring from my screen, that she'd lied again, that there was still a maybe growing inside her, that every excruciating step I'd taken toward moving on now teetered on the edge of collapse. I could smell the phantom scent of her shampoo in the stale air, could feel the ghost of her fingers brushing mine when we'd first seen that ultrasound together, how we'd laughed at the way the baby, had it ever been mine, looked like it was waving in the grayscale static. Now my thumbs hovered over the keyboard, torn between the fury scalding my throat, "After everything, you dropped this bomb," and the horrifying pull of hope curdling in my chest like spoiled milk. Outside, a car alarm wailed, the sound syncopating with my pulse as I realized the cruelest truth. She hadn't sent this out of love, but because she was terrified, because hospitals smelled like bleach and regret, because her ex had probably blocked her number the second she mentioned keeping it. The ultrasound taunted me from the screen, that amorphous blob of cells now a Rorschach test. Was it salvation or self-destruction to reply? I threw my phone across the room, watched it skid under the couch where the glow of the screen lingered like a dying ember, and for the first time since she'd shattered us, I screamed into the silence until my voice cracked raw, because the only thing worse than losing her was the terrifying possibility that she might still need me. The DNA results came back on a Tuesday, the same day I found her ex's Instagram post flaunting a new girlfriend, his arms slung possessively around some blonde's waist, captioned "Upgrades Only." The envelope sat unopened on my kitchen counter for 6 hours while I paced grooves into the linoleum, my mind swinging between two truths: either the child was mine, and I'd spend the next 18 years tied to a woman who'd gutted me, or it was his, and she dragged me through hell for nothing. When I finally ripped it open, the words, 0% probability of paternity, blurred under the sudden burn of tears, not of grief, but of grotesque relief. I drove to her apartment with the paper crumpled in my fist, rehearsing the acid-drenched speech I'd practiced for weeks, only to find her ex's BMW idling out front. He emerged from the building with a duffel bag, his duffel bag, the one that had sat in her closet for months after their first breakup, and the realization hit like a sucker punch: she'd called him first. The rage that followed was a living thing, a red tide surging behind my eyes as I crossed the street, the DNA results fluttering from my hand like a surrender flag. He saw me coming and smirked, that same smirk he'd worn in every photo she'd ever hurriedly swiped off her phone when I entered the room. "Hey, buddy," he drawled, tossing the duffel into his trunk, "heard you got played twice." My knuckles connected with his jaw before I'd even decided to swing, the crack of bone on cartilage sweeter than anything I'd felt in months. He staggered, laughed, then spat blood onto the pavement. "She's still texting me, you know," he wheezed, wiping his mouth. "Sent me the ultrasound too. Guess she wanted us both to know it's mine." Behind him, her apartment curtain twitched. She'd been watching the whole time. I left him hunched over his bumper, left the DNA results swirling in the gutter, left the last shred of hope I didn't know I'd still carried. That night, I burned the ultrasound copy I'd kept in my wallet, watched the edges curl black in the sink, and for the first time in a year, slept through the night. 6 months of silence shattered with 3 sharp raps on my door at 2 a.m. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole. No one else knocked like that, 2 quick taps and then a hesitant third, like she was testing whether she still had the right to disturb my life. When I wrenched the door open, she stood there clutching a car seat with a sleeping newborn swaddled inside, her face gaunt under the porch light, eyes wide with something between desperation and defiance. "They messed up the test," she blurted before I could speak, her voice frayed at the edges. "The clinic called me last week. There was a mix-up with the samples. They said there's no way the results were accurate. I didn't know how to tell you." The words tumbled out in a frantic rush, her fingers tightening around the handle of the car seat until her knuckles bleached white. I stared at the baby's face, searching for my own features in the slope of its nose, the curve of its eyelids, but all I saw was him, that same sharp chin and thick brows, the ghost of her ex smirking up at me from this tiny, innocent face. She must have seen the realization darken my expression because her breath hitched, one hand fluttering toward my arm before she caught herself and pulled back. "Please," she whispered, "just come get a new test with us. If it's negative again, I'll disappear. But if it's yours." The unspoken "then you're trapped" hung between us, thick as the scent of baby powder and the lingering hospital smell still clinging to her clothes. Behind her, a taxi idled at the curb, the driver watching us with bored disinterest. I thought of the burned ultrasound ashes I'd scrubbed from my sink months ago, the way her ex had laughed when I punched him, the way she'd watched from the window and done nothing. The baby stirred, letting out a soft whimper, and something primal twisted in my chest. Not love, not yet, but the terrifying weight of what if. I stepped back and let the door swing shut between us, her sharp inhale the last thing I heard before the deadbolt clicked. Through the wood, her voice came broken and small. "I'll be at the clinic at 9. I didn't answer. But when sunrise came, I was sitting in my car outside the testing center, gripping a coffee I hadn't touched, staring at the entrance and wondering if forgiveness was something you could choke on. The cops let me off with a warning. Her ex didn't press charges, not because he was merciful, but because he had a better weapon. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived, a court order for another DNA test, filed by him, claiming reasonable doubt about the results. The legal jargon boiled down to one truth: he wanted back in. She showed up at my door again, this time in broad daylight, dark circles under her eyes. The baby, Daniel, my son, his name still bitter on my tongue, was strapped to her chest in one of those fabric slings, his tiny fist clutching her shirt. "He's threatening to sue for custody," she said, voice hollow. "Says if the baby is his, he'll take him. And if it's yours." She trailed off, but the unspoken words hung between us. "Then he'll make sure you never get peace." I stared at the baby's face, searching for myself in him. He blinked up at me with eyes that were neither hers nor mine, just new, untouched by all this ugliness. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice rough. She flinched. "I want you to fight." "But..." Her fingers tightened around the sling. "If you walk away now, I'll understand. I'll tell them you're not the father. You'll never hear from us again." The offer was a grenade with the pin pulled. Freedom. Clean hands. No more court dates, no more fighting her ex in parking lots, no more wondering if every smile she gave the baby was secretly meant for him. But then the baby cooed, a soft, curious sound, and my resolve cracked. "We'll fight," I said. "But on one condition." She held her breath. "His name changes. Today." Her eyes welled up, but she nodded. "Okay." I reached out, letting the baby grip my finger. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, warm and trusting. "Welcome to the war, kid," I murmured.